Xiaoqing knew humans were numerous, but she hadn't expected it to be this overwhelming. Standing by herself, a scar-faced guy suddenly walked up to the strategy table without her asking. She didn't ask him to explain, but the audience did. Scarface said that this combat formation was split into 3 units, with 2 larger units encircling the smaller one. The purpose was to prevent the beasts from fleeing into the city, which was why they had mustered so much military power around the mountain. The number of troops called up even surprised the superhumans who were summoned. The guy with hair covering his eyes couldn't believe it, but Scarface thought it was essential. Thanks to his tough childhood, back before he became a superhuman, Scarface had encountered a level 4 antelope at a zoo. What kind of crazy zoo keeps mutant animals? That antelope alone wiped out nearly 100 rescue personnel, and it was just a level 4. If a zoo creature was that terrifying, how much more monstrous must wild beasts in the mountains be? A level 4 beast in the forest would only serve as food for the others there. Scarface's tale made everyone's skin crawl. He went on, explaining that sheer numbers were the only way to subdue the beasts and reduce casualties. Having lots of people around would lower the casualty rate, which worried Xiaoqing. Could her master and the beasts withstand attacks from all 3 directions? Just as Scarface mentioned, the commanders were planning a 3-pronged advance. The main force was in the middle, with the 2 flanking teams set to encircle and destroy. Specifically, tanks would pave the way, followed by superhuman units as the main offensive, with infantry providing support and eliminating any threats. The bearded commander poured his heart into this battle, insisting that all soldiers carry energy-disrupting devices. Carrying those things was all benefit and no harm. It masked their energy and body odor, so anyone with body odor issues had nothing to worry about. This operation had a 24-hour time limit, and with that, the official deployment began. Just as planned, the tanks lined up neatly, all firing to clear a path. They advanced, unleashing a storm of bullets straight into the forest. Behind the wall of tanks were hundreds upon thousands of soldiers, standing in orderly rows, ready to march into the mountains. To the left, smoke and fire surged violently, and bombs turned the mountain into a blaze. On the right, fighter jets rained down fire, setting the forest ablaze. "Are we trying to cause a wildfire here?" a soldier yelled after witnessing the human side's firepower. "Don't worry," his comrade replied. "There's a huge firefighting force stationed around the mountain. Besides, all the explosions weren't just to clear a path. They were to quickly reach the beast's stronghold. Well, clearing a path in a way. It's like dumping sugar into a glass of water to make it sweet while calling it making sugar water." In the midst of this chatter, their superior caught them. "Stop the idle talk and focus." The soldier quickly mumbled a, "Yes, sir." That'll teach him, standing at the front and daring to chat. General Lee was one of the twin heroes of the Federation. Back in his younger days, his long hair gave him a fiercer look. Now that he'd cut it, he looked calm and steady, the kind of seasoned person who no longer cared for flaunting. General Lee's strength was indisputable. He could single-handedly take on an entire army, the strongest superhuman around. It was just a shame he was now blind. Such a pity. These soldiers, freshly reprimanded, were already chattering away, even gossiping about their commander. Truly shameless. After a prolonged barrage, the mountains started to cave in. The lead soldier rallied the rest to advance, and they surged forward in a mass, like ants spilling from a broken nest, yelling all the way. Yell all they want. If those tree roots knew, they'd be pounded into the ground. Not just the roots. Even mist-made fog beasts appeared, stomping their feet and roaring back. Xiaoqing immediately recognized this handiwork. Who else could it be but her master? Ziyu blocked the middle line with snake axe-shaped roots and 2 massive fake beasts, standing firm to keep the visitors from moving forward. "Commander, the front line is under attack." And that's not all. The scar-faced guy's left flank and the city girl's right flank were both hit with roots and fog beasts too. The commander rushed out, pale, binoculars in hand, yelling, "How can this be? But really, is there anything in this world that's impossible? If you think you can charge in here, it won't be that easy." These were just the message from Ziyu. Bearded commander, faced with a tough situation, still managed a confident grin. He set the secretary on a deadline to compile the numbers of roots and fog beasts, and ordered the Iron Birds to support the left and right flanks, leaving the center to handle itself. Anti-aircraft guns began firing incendiary rounds, specialized for the fog beasts, but as the shots neared, they were blocked. Through the smoky haze and mist, the outline of a gorilla lunging forward appeared. One gorilla, then suddenly, hundreds more, all ferocious. They tore into the soldiers, who shouted, "Fire! Fire!" King Kong hefted a massive rock and hurled it in line with the guerrilla assault. The rock smashed down onto a human tank, exploding upon impact, and the guerrilla horde surged forward. The humans' original formations began to crumble. With the massive rock as a boundary, none dared cross it. However, despite the disorder in the front ranks, there were still countless soldiers lined up behind, ready to push forward. For now, though, this should do. Keep them stuck there. Crocodile called out to Ziyu, saying a mouse had made it inside already. No worries, Ziyu had already assigned mantises to take care of it. A squad of soldiers, armed with laser-sighted guns, advanced deeper into the mountain. Suddenly, they spotted something with two glowing red eyes staring up at them from the ground. But it wasn't just one. Outside, a storm was raging. Inside, everything was eerily calm. The command team was busy calculating their forces, weapons, and what they could achieve with them. Beyond the sheer numbers and firepower, they had an exceptional asset in General Li, greatly increasing their odds of victory. The bearded commander clarified their mission. Taking down the crocodile was secondary. Finding the brains behind the operation was the primary goal. The initial plan had been to fight from outside the mist to avoid the fog beasts, but now those beasts had emerged from the mist to block them. The commander didn't know how they'd manage that, but he was certain their boss had to be powerful, at least rank 1. Little did he know, Ziyu was currently at the peak of rank 2. Unaware of this, he set the objective. Within the next 23 hours and 41 minutes, they had to uncover all mysteries hidden in the gorge. Inside the misty area, Ziyu had set up his defenses, with the willow tree as the center. On the left, soldiers were shooting wildly at Qianqin. She retaliated passionately, hurling branches at them. She was surrounded by enemies. To her right was another attacker who called her a witch as he frantically fired, but Qianqin shielded herself with her branches. So focused was the soldier on shooting at Qianqin that he didn't notice death approaching from behind. White Tiger pounced with a crunch. Qianqin climbed onto White Tiger's back and charged forward, followed closely by a pack of green Fang wolves. This time, there were a lot of enemies, and Qianqin reminded everyone to stay alert. Just as she finished speaking, White Crane flew over, screeching. Qianqin didn't know bird language, so she didn't understand. But I know, so I'll translate. "Missy, duck! Missile incoming." As soon as I finished translating, the missile exploded, sending rocks, trees, and debris flying everywhere. The missile had come from City Girl's team. That woman, now at level 8 after stealing the pill, had become even more detestable. After the missile, she swore she'd skin White Tiger. The missile hit its target square on, but no one died because White Tiger had absorbed all the damage. The monkey recognized the mutated girl among the beasts and admitted that the animal's forces weren't half bad. That missile had been custom-made to deal with beasts, and even after taking a direct hit, none of them died. White Tiger might be dumb when it came to learning, but it was the true king of the jungle. Among the beasts, there was a human-animal hybrid. If they could capture that one, they might uncover the mastermind behind all this. This was something Lengling could figure out, so it was obvious to everyone. In terms of negotiation, it was easier to talk with a half-human than a creature that was 100% animal. The companion, who named Lion, felt thrilled seeing that mutated woman. He immediately transformed to lion form. Tell City Girl to take care of the woman, leave the White Tiger for him. By doing so, they'd win both of them. Elsewhere, a small stick suddenly swung up from below, aimed straight at a soldier's nether regions. Brutal. With the golden monkey, there had to be a wild boar, and with a boar, of course, a honey badger followed. The boar leaped in and pulled off a stunning quadra-kill with a single swift move. Honey badger zipped through the bullets, using its rock-solid body to strike the soldiers, slapping them with its backside and face. Don't underestimate that tough rear. It had taken many a beating from Ziyu, and it was as hard as steel. The trio of rowdy youngsters used all manner of vicious moves, easily neutralizing the soldiers. A whole squad lay trembling on the ground in various positions, the most common being face down with hands clutching their, well, you get the picture. These three worked as a team, showing how their years of village-raiding mischief hadn't been in vain. The golden monkey, stick in hand, was making its way through the bushes when it spotted a suspicious figure. Raising its stick, it leaped up to strike, just like it had done countless times before. But this time, the target in the bushes had been waiting for it. Inside the bushes was a superhuman with a sharp scorpion tail who countered with a tail swipe, slicing through the monkey midair. The golden monkey was flung away, but managed to break its fall with its stick, landing near the two other rowdy youngsters. Though the tail hadn't cut it in half, it left a deep slash across its side. The wound on its belly showed a purple tinge, with veins pulsing around the gash, a sure sign of poison. The monkey gripped its stick, struggling to stay upright, sweat dripping down as its face showed distress. The scorpion-tailed man laughed, saying, "That's a super toxin, a blend of the deadliest poisons. You've got 1 minute left, monkey." Of course, Honey Badger wasn't about to let anyone laugh at its wounded friend. It charged with its indomitable body, zigzagging to the scorpion's back, baring its teeth for a bite. But before it could sink its teeth in, it was stomped down into the ground. The scorpion-tailed guy had backup. No, make that 2 backers. A woman wielding a massive hammer charged toward the golden monkey, who could barely move. She aimed a powerful swing, but instead of striking the monkey, she hit the wild boar, who had rushed in to protect its friend. The blow split its head open. The woman landed next to her 2 allies. All 3 were superhumans, a level 6 scorpion-tailed mutant, a level 7 hammer-wielding woman, and an elder with lightning speed at level 8. The 3 rowdy youngsters had only Honey Badger at level 8, with the other 2 at level 7. Judging by their levels, the trio of youngsters seemed stronger, but they were all battered and worn, so the fight's outcome was far from certain. The humans all climbed up at once, knowing the beasts were wounded and aiming to finish them off quickly. Honey Badger didn't wait for them to strike first. It charged straight at them. Uncle Thunder saw this and laughed, openly looking down on the Honey Badger. The Honey Badger let out a roar, and its whole body surged with electricity, shocking the extraordinary fighters both physically and mentally. In all their lives, they'd seen Pikachu shoot lightning, but never a Honey Badger doing it. While the humans were shaken in both mind and body, the golden monkey and wild boar charged forward, one smashing, the other ramming straight into the 2 men's faces, leaving the woman to the Honey Badger's iron head technique to clear her mind a bit. Locusts are an arthropod, often seen with green, yellow, or brown bodies. There are thousands of types in the world, some long, some short, some fat, some thin, but none usually larger than a thumb. This species is known to be a pest. However, a single locust is of no concern and can easily be swatted. If there are a few hundred, they can be stir-fried and eaten. But if their numbers reach into the thousands or even hundreds of thousands, they become a terrifying beast. Many countries have suffered from locust plagues, the consequences disastrous and difficult to overcome. The author introduces the locust here as a metaphor for humanity, abundant, harmful, and hard to deal with, driving people to despair. The battle between the trio of rascals and the trio of superhumans ended. The scorpion's tail had been severed, marking a victory for the 3 youngsters. From the time it got poisoned until now, several tens of minutes had passed, yet the golden monkey still wasn't dead. This was because, from long ago, it had awakened a selective absorption ability, allowing it to absorb only what was beneficial. The golden monkey propped itself up with a stick, trying to stand. It didn't die from the poison, but its selective absorption skill, upon detecting toxins, brought about excruciating side effects. When its body received the poison, the selective absorption forced its cells to react violently to expel the toxins, wringing out each cell as if squeezing clothes dry, expelling any tainted cells, and bringing forth waves of intense pain. With the superhuman trio taken care of, a platoon of soldiers arrived, immediately firing at the 3 youngsters. The golden monkey could no longer move, so the Honey Badger and wild boar shielded it with their bodies. Being high-level beasts, ordinary bullets couldn't penetrate their hides, but the pain was immense. The Honey Badger unleashed electric shocks at the soldiers, while the wild boar charged forward fiercely. They attacked to block the humans in front, but unwittingly left themselves open to danger from behind. Behind the golden monkey, a giant superhuman figure approached. It was Uncle Thunder. He still had some fight left and was preparing to attack the monkey. He struck, his hand reaching for the golden monkey, which had no chance to dodge, but the wild boar intervened. Before the monkey's eyes, the wild boar took the hit meant for it. Uncle Thunder's hand pierced through the bullet-resistant hide of the wild boar, going in even deeper. The golden monkey's face went pale. It bit its lip, trying not to scream, but tears rolled down its face. It knew this blow was fatal for its friend. Dead for sure, right before its eyes, and all because of it. The honey badger saw it too, and it cried. Uncle Thunder's hand dug into the wild boar's flesh, reaching its heart and squeezing tightly. A horrific scream echoed, Blood poured from its mouth, and that was the end of the wild boar. It collapsed toward the monkey, lying motionless on the ground, incapable of fighting or fleeing, only to stay there forever. The golden monkey couldn't hold back anymore. It burst into tears, snot and all. This was truly crying. Just shedding tears alone couldn't express the panic it felt inside now. The honey badger only glanced at its friend for a second, but a detonator was already right in its face. As soon as it noticed, it exploded, right at the honey badger's head, with blood splattering everywhere. The attack came from another superhuman. Aside from him, a few others were rushing forward too, reminding the soldiers to switch to special ammo. The golden monkey thought both its friends were dead. Losing all reason, ignoring the dull ache in its stomach and the blood spilling from its mouth, it grabbed a stick, yelling and charging through the storm of bullets, ready to die with its brothers. But to its surprise, the honey badger was still alive, biting the back of its neck and dragging it away. Brother Honey Badger used its electric-charged body to dive deeper into the mountains, with soldiers immediately shouting to chase after them. The honey badger, holding the crying golden monkey, dashed away as fast as it could, carrying its injured comrade with great difficulty. Its forelimbs were a mess, torn to shreds. It had taken bullets with them earlier to survive, though it was still in severe pain, hurting and exhausted, with both sweat and tears streaming down its face. The situation was dire. Tension was high, so let's switch to another scene to ease the suspense. Somewhere else in the forest, two beams of light, one green, one yellow, flashed around the soldiers. The lights were just like when the mantis and the little ant had fought against Bull Demon when he had just ranked up. It was indeed the two of them. Flash, driven by a hatred for humans, was furiously slashing at them. The mantis couldn't hold it back. If this continued, Flash would soon exhaust itself. Flash, however, cared more about wiping out humanity than its own safety and charged forward, moving like a madman. It moved so fast that the camera couldn't keep up, so let's switch over to White Tiger. Just as the camera switched on, White Tiger spat out a mouthful of blood. White Tiger, Thorn, White Crane, and a lone wolf were all severely wounded. The humans didn't fare any better either. Only a few infantry and two genetically modified superhumans were left, panting heavily, literally like dogs. The beasts had slaughtered 100 humans with corpses strewn all over, yet the humans still wouldn't give up. Lion had noticed that the beast's strength was depleting, with only one wind wolf left. He also noticed that White Tiger had been protecting the mutant woman from the start, so they had to use her to create an opportunity to wipe them all out. The group with White Tiger and Thorn? Well, of course, they weren't doing well at all. White Tiger, shielding against the blasts, had sustained some serious injuries. Its vision was fading, and its energy was nearly drained. If it hadn't been forcing itself to hold on, Thorn would have long been captured by humans. After fighting to exhaustion and clearing out some soldiers, another wave of humans arrived. This time, a stronger group than before, filled with superhumans. Leading them was the genetically modified vampire Gula. "It looks like you're in a tough battle. Is it hard for you to deal with that tiger?" Hearing the voice, Lion was surprised to know Gula had come. Thorn was already completely worn out, and just as they were about to finish, reinforcements arrived. How much longer would this go on? Not only that, but the newly arrived Gula had an extraordinarily powerful aura. His exact rank was unclear, but it seemed only ZU might be able to handle him. Gula didn't even bother fighting himself, ordering the attack to continue. The beasts couldn't hold out much longer. The superhumans charged, using their numbers to overwhelm the beasts, who fought back fiercely, each one having to face multiple enemies at once. The tiger bit down across a superhuman. The wind wolf pounced. White Crane aimed its beak at the most sensitive spots on the men, while Thorn used branches to grab a bunch of them by the head all at once. Then the city girl shouted, holding 2 flash bombs, and threw them right in Thorn's face to blind her vision. She knew she couldn't win with regular tactic, and she couldn't lose. "Go to the hell, bitch!" Charging forward with sharp claws that once killed the scientist, she took advantage of the poor visibility to land a critical strike on her opponent. The pain was evident on Thorn's face. She lacked combat experience to handle dirty tactics like this. Bombs hadn't stopped falling for even a second since the battle began. On the air, the iron birds kept shooting at the beast, one wad after another, with smoke, flames, and dirt flying everywhere. Did they blow up? Someone asked if those fire could be enough to take the whole forest down. Beneath the massive tree roots lay a whole troop of apes, each with eyes blazing. With King Kong as their leader, Apes were quickly became the nightmare to those soldiers. The iron birds, after a round of bombardment, were quickly torn apart. The falcons, with their terrifying speed, smashed of breaking through Ziyu's roots. He watched it all and smirked. How could a missile of this caliber penetrate me? Sitting at home, acting as a strategist to guide his pet in battle, when someone came by to disturb him, that person stepped on a small branch, snapping it with a loud crack, and then emerged from behind a willow tree. Ziyu cast a sidelong glance. Finally, a human has arrived. General Li, how did he end up near this willow tree? It was said he was very strong, but his power had never been shown openly. However, anyone who could approach this willow quietly, close enough for Ziyu to notice only at the last moment, was certainly worth a lot. Turning back to the scene at the front line, City Girl jabbed her claws into Qianqin. Not only did she pierce through her, but she pulled her claws out, letting Qianqin fly freely toward the tree. She didn't aim for the heart, wanting to take Qianqin back for questioning, but her strike was still ruthless, partly because she loathed these strange beasts, and partly because she hated the scent that reminded her of that country girl Xiao Ling, whom she despised the most. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the white tiger lunged from behind, swiping its sharp claws across Lengling's body. Surprisingly, it didn't slice her through, only sending her flying few meters. Lion shouted Lengling's name as she lay on the ground, clutching her bloody neck and cursing. Damn it! Qianqin was saved by the tiger once again. Suddenly, White Tiger opened its mouth, telling her to go to find the sacred tree. Seeing the dumbest student in class finally speak nearly shocked Qianqin to fainting. But that wasn't the issue, sis. The issue was that many humans with powerful spiritual energy were still behind her. If they didn't flee, everyone would die. Qianqin didn't want to go. She screamed, but White Tiger roared back. Unable to out-yell White Tiger, Qianqin bit her lip, used branches as legs, and ran straight. Of course, the humans didn't let her go easily, quickly chasing after, only to be blocked by Windwolf. Close-range attacks didn't work, so they switched to long-range. Stop her now! The soldiers fired at Qianqin like mad. Just as the shots were about to hit, White Crane shielded her. The bullets had been modified specifically for mutated beasts, causing intense pain, piercing Crane's body and making it cough up blood. Windwolf was suffering similarly, stabbed repeatedly, with a certain death looming. White Tiger, too, was surrounded by more than 10 men, with little hope for survival. Still, Qianqin managed to flee, running and crying, blaming herself for being useless, unable to do anything for White Tiger. Superhuman after superhuman kept advancing. They struck Egret's already battered body mercilessly. Crane took a metal rod to the head, slowly losing consciousness. It remembered the battle with Axe Snake back then, when it had no desire to fight the snake. Crane was different from the other beasts. It wasn't close to Xiao Qing or Xiao Ling, and it didn't want to die for them. Crane thought that the beast's vengeful obsession, together with Ziyu, was childish. The dead were gone, so what was the point of clinging to such grudges? But in the end, it had been there in that battle, fighting and being defeated stupidly. Cranes lived on vast lands, and they are communal birds, usually forming large groups by family line. They are sacred creatures, but quite delicate. When the first wave of spiritual energy came, they nearly went extinct, and Ziyu's crane was one of the lucky survivors. After the fight with Axe Snake, White Crane stayed beside Ziyu. Even if it wasn't valued, even if its screen time was less than Honey Badger's butt, it was always there, living happily, at least having a home and a place to rest its wings when tired. Over time, being close to other pets, it gradually understood the determination everyone had during that battle with Axe Snake. Seeking revenge was a feeling that only grew more painful the more it understood, especially for one as powerless as it was, making the pain even sharper, feeling helpless to the point of shame. So it made up its mind, if a day of revenge ever came, it would give everything it had. White Crane stretched out its wings, using the last of its strength, and shouted at the superhumans, "I absolutely won't let you pass." Humans wouldn't accept such an insult from a dying crane. They charged, intending to cut off its beak, but White Tiger pounced first. The tiger bit one man, stomped on another, 2 in total, bit them to death, then spat out the one in its mouth, looking up at over 100 more soldiers in matching uniforms. The soldiers in uniform, following the orders of the one not in uniform, vast in number and filled with fierce momentum. Facing the imminent danger pressing down on it, White Tiger recalled the words Ziyu once told it. He said that its pursuit of great strength was a good thing, and that in terms of combat technique, it was in no way inferior to others of its rank. However, physical strength doesn't last forever. It would slowly be worn down by time. When that moment came, it might feel fear from sensing its own weakness. So you must constantly train your mind, harden it to the point that, when facing a powerful enemy, you won't even think about turning tail and running. That way, you can carry the weight of all your responsibilities. Ziyu's words weren't meant to encourage White Tiger to fight recklessly to the death. They were meant to teach it to maintain its own dignity, even in the most dangerous, challenging situations. To become a powerful, trustworthy king of the forest, able to use the majesty of a ruler to protect the creatures it cherished. Just like now, as hundreds of superhumans charged at it, it couldn't be a cowering tiger with a broken spirit. The things Ziyu told it, it would learn them all because it was the king of beasts. In that same forest, covered in fog like any other day, there was an eerie breeze of death lingering. Flash stood on the ground, looking up with pride at the scene before him. White Tiger stood atop a mountain of hundreds of superhuman corpses, bold and majestic. The little ant looked up in awe, muttering, "That foolish tiger." Calling it foolish was actually a compliment. Normally, the ant would call it the dumb tiger. On a lush green plain, a large tiger was stalking a herd of wild buffalo. No one knew when the aura of a king started to show on White Tiger. Was it when it first stepped out on its own, or the first time it successfully hunted? Or maybe it was when it faced death without flinching? No, it was none of these. Flash had been staring at the tiger, unable to look away. Was it because it was so handsome? White Tiger, luckily, stayed still for the ant to stare. But something was wrong. When had White Tiger's eyes turned from green to a dull gray? Blue Mantis arrived behind Flash, also struck by White Tiger's grandeur. "What's the ant staring at so intensely? Let me have a look too." As the mantis looked closer, it suddenly gasped, and tears began streaming down. White Tiger was still standing, but it couldn't move anymore, and a large piece of skin on its right side had been stripped away. The mantis's tears brought out Flash's own tears, which he had been holding back. Flash's whole body shook, mouth open wide, as he tilted his head to the sky and screamed, the hatred so intense it manifested as a fiery red spiritual aura radiating from his body. Just how much more did humans want to take from him? How far did they want to spread their hate before they were satisfied? Flash's scream echoed through the mountains. The sky that had been blue with white clouds now turned gray, signaling that the suffering was only beginning. Elsewhere in the forest, Honey Badger, after momentarily evading the humans, was applying leaves to its friend. It used to have two best friends, but now only one was left, barely holding on. Honey Badger had just caught its breath when the sound of humans forced it to hold it again. The golden monkey wanted to fight alongside its friend, but it couldn't even stand. Honey Badger was exhausted too, but it wouldn't hide here. If the humans found them, they'd kill them both. Leaving the golden monkey to rest, it darted off. If only Ziyu's branches were as long as tree roots, they could have reached them to help, but sadly, they weren't. The humans were searching for Honey Badger, still remembering how it fought Gao Yuan's team back then, determined to eliminate it this time. "No need to search. I'll come to you myself. Keep looking, and you might find my friend," thought Honey Badger. "That rotten monkey can't play anymore, so I'll play for it." Honey Badger charged in from behind, taking a quick bite out of a superhuman's shoulder. The rest of the superhumans spotted it and immediately attacked fiercely. First, they punched it with iron gloves, then slammed its belly with a heavy hammer. Huh? When they lifted the hammer, Honey Badger was gone. Apparently, it had burrowed into the ground. The 5 superhumans looked around in confusion. Beneath one superhuman's feet, Honey Badger launched an iron-headed strike right up into his jaw, scattering bombs from his attack. Despite launching the attack, Honey Badger was truly worn out, a mouthful of blood lingering, its tired, bloodshot eyes turning as gray as White Tiger's earlier. Under Thunder closed in on Honey Badger, demanding the whereabouts of the golden monkey, asking, but not waiting for an answer. He struck Honey Badger's spine so hard the blood pooled in its mouth spilled out. The force of Lightning Bolt's blow shattered the ground, burying Honey Badger in rocks and soil. Honey Badger lay there trembling, mouth wide open, battered as if on the brink of death. But these humans wanted it dead for sure, so they punched its belly again just to make sure. After that punch came dozens more. Lightning Bolt punched while cursing, "How dare you filthy beasts mess with me? Go on, keep running." Honey Badger raised a hand to shield its face, crying from the pain, its body covered in blood. Uncle Thunder ended his assault with a brutal uppercut to Honey Badger's chin, sending it flying and slamming into a large rock. Dust filled the air, and as it cleared, Honey Badger was still hanging on by a thread. The green-haired woman thought it was pointless to waste any more time. Stop wasting your time and kill it. There are many other beasts to kill. Even if they didn't kill it, Honey Badger was already dying. Just before its final moments, it recalled the old days when Ziyu used to hang it from a branch, and Xiaoling would bring it dried meat. Now it wanted some too. Wanted to find Xiaoling and ask for dried meat. That stuff was really tasty. 4 superhumans surrounded Honey Badger, which was fine. All the better for them all to die together. Honey Badger coughed up 2 steaming bombs. Now you get it, you bastards! When it broke through the ground earlier, it had swallowed the bombs on purpose. The bombs exploded at close range. No dodging now, you damn humans. And they took the full blast of both bombs. They knew the power well enough. The explosion obliterated Honey Badger, along with 4 superhumans around it, with limbs flying in all directions. Ancient Crocodile sensed it and was preparing to drag its enormous body to the scene. Messing with a crocodile's family, especially its 3 young ones, meant the crocodile would fight with all its strength. Honey Badger found itself in a place bright as day, with no trees, no animals, no supernatural beings around. It stood there for a long time before finally hearing someone call out, "There you are." This place, seemingly empty, actually had Xiaoling, the real Xiaoling that Honey Badger knew, not some mixed-up version. She looked lively and full of energy, exactly like the Xiaoling it remembered. Whether Xiaoling had been waiting for Honey Badger here, or an angel had turned into Xiaoling to give it a final moment of happiness, didn't matter. What mattered was that Honey Badger felt its body at peace, its heart finally healed. Tears and snot ran down its face as it leapt into Xiaoling's arms, clutching tightly and crying hard. It had tried to be strong for so long, but now it didn't have to anymore. Xiaoling held it close, whispering that there would be no more pain from now on. Then she took it by the hand, and Honey Badger's glorious life had come to a close, complete at last. Of the 3 wild little kids, only Golden Monkey was still breathing. After resting, it followed the sounds of explosions. What it found was bodies driven into the ground, weapons flung far, and Honey Badger lying in a pool of blood. Tears welled up in Monkey's eyes. It couldn't say a word. Both friends had sacrificed themselves to protect it, leaving it alone here. Was that lucky, or was it a curse? Somehow, the 2 bombs had spared Under Thunder's life. He was crawling weakly on the ground, crying out, "It hurts." Is anyone there? His whole body was bruised, his eyes blinded, but his mouth was still in good working order, shouting to kill and skin Honey Badger. If Honey Badger was dead, he'd trample its corpse. He'd never show any mercy to those beasts. Shut that mouth! You think you didn't hit Honey Badger hard enough? You punched, tossed, and stomped it without mercy. Didn't you feel any pain then? Only now when it hits back, do you feel pain? Everyone could feel their blood boiling at Uncle Thunder's insane ranting, so imagine Monkey's reaction. It smashed him straight in the mouth with his stick. Golden Monkey still had its golden hue, but now a blazing aura of red rage surrounded it. This was the one who had crushed its friend's heart, beaten it, beat all of them until they were left broken. You're done for. Uncle Thunder didn't need his eyes to feel the seething hatred in Monkey. Just moments ago, he'd been shouting down from his high horse, but now he was begging for mercy. Even if he brought out anything, it wouldn't buy back his life. Golden Monkey had reached its limit. Eyes bloodshot, it ignored Uncle Thunder's pleas and struck again and again with whatever it had in hand. On the green grass today, a new streak of blood painted the scene. Across the way, Thunder Fury lay beaten beyond recognition, his face and hair in tatters, his body marked with deep bruises. Next to him lay Golden Monkey's staff, broken into pieces and left on the ground. Golden Monkey had planned to break the old staff, then grab a new one to continue, but it was too tired. Carrying Honey Badger's lifeless body on its back, the wound on its stomach had purged all the poison, but with all the movement, it had torn open, bleeding heavily. It walked for a while with Honey Badger on its back until it reached the spot where Wild Boar lay. Golden Monkey placed a hand on Wild Boar's head, then looked up to the sky. Today, the sky was clear and beautifully blue, putting one in a good mood to smile. Normally on days like this, they'd all go out together, gather fruit to eat, bickering and wrestling a bit, a little rough and rude. But thinking back, it was good. Now was good too. In the end, they were still together, alive or dead, it didn't matter. Elsewhere in the forest, Qianqin, battered and bruised, dragged herself step by step towards a willow tree. As she leaned against it, catching her breath, a rustling sound came from behind. In the misty darkness, a familiar black and white coat emerged. "White Tiger, is that you?" she asked. But which tiger? Only dogs were here now, a pack of them trailing Qianqin, especially one named Lengling, who dared to wear White Tiger's skin over her body. Seeing Qianqin looking confused, Lengling felt great, began to mock her. "This country bumpkin actually thought I was that tiger, huh? I'll have you know, that tiger's fur is really warm." With a sick grin, she laughed, shocking Qianqin to her core. Ignoring the pain or the fact she was outmatched, Qianqin launched her vines straight at Lan Leng. "Die, you bitch!" But that wretched Lengling wasn't just any ordinary opponent. She easily dodged the vines and closed in on Qianqin. "Ha ha ha! You're too slow. With that beaten-up body of yours, what can you do but die?" The bitch Lengling got close, grabbing Qianqin by the hair with one hand and digging into her old wound with the other. Damn, that mangy dog Lengling really fought dirty. She was about to tear out Qianqin's heart when, out of nowhere, she got hit hard. Didn't know who struck her, only that it hurt like a small bomb going off. She jumped back, cursing, but it seemed every time she messed with Qianqin, she got attacked. Last time, it was White Tiger. This time, it was Qing Zhao and Lengfeng. Finally, the trio was reunited. The two guys stood in front, shielding Qianqin, who sat behind them, still clutching White Tiger's skin. Lengling was shocked. Humans protecting a strange beast? She was sure those two were agents from the Mountain Organization. Well, she wasn't entirely wrong, but not quite right either. Lengfeng hadn't signed a contract with Ziyu, so technically, who knew if he even counted as an employee? Gula decided that since others were here, they might as well capture them alive for questioning. As for Qianqin, he told her to back off to avoid causing more trouble. In her current state, she couldn't fight anyone. Gula assured them he could handle it himself. A vampire who wasn't afraid of sunlight? Now that was terrifying. Who dare take him on? In the heart of the mist, Ziyu and General Li were staring deeply into each other's eyes. Finally, General Li broke the silence. "So you're the boss around here, huh?" "That's right," Ziyu replied. Hid-Face didn't even need a mouth to speak, and it was speaking human language so fluently that General Li nearly showed his shock. Though he knew there were species with awakened intelligence, meeting one face-to-face was still quite amazing, especially one that was, of all things, a talking tree. Slowly drawing his sword, General Li challenged. "I was just asking, and you actually admitted it? So, are you the one behind all these foff beasts too?" As General Li spoke, Ziyu's system analyzed his abilities. First off, this guy named Li had peak power at rank 2, was 27 years old, and had innate intelligence as his talent. His special skills included sword energy and alchemy. Now, you've probably seen sword energy in enough movies. It's the skill of concentrating one's energy into a visible blade of light to cause damage. As for his alchemy abilities, General Li could make two types of pills. One to boost spiritual energy, and another that forcefully raised ranks by consuming life force. His maximum lifespan was 105 years, but the exact cost of a forced rank increase was unknown. Answering General Li's earlier question, Ziyu clarified, "Yeah, it's all me. You humans shouldn't have barged in here? Just stay out of my mountain." General Li, however, saw things differently. He believed that strange beasts shouldn't be encroaching on human territory. For humanity to live peacefully, such beasts had to be eliminated. Ziyu laughed. "And where exactly is human territory, huh? We clearly don't see eye to eye, so why waste time arguing? Let's just get to it." General Li struck first with a quick sword blow, infused with spiritual power, but when his blade hit the tree, the spiritual energy held, yet the sword shattered completely. He watched in shock as fragments of the blade flew past his face. Whoever had told him General Li was blind was clearly lying. For a moment, General Li's attention slipped, and he paid the price with a strangling grip around his neck. Even his glasses took off in fear, abandoning him. Initially, it seemed like this battle was evenly matched, yet here they were, about to end with a neck-breaking move. Flashback to 5 days earlier, during Humanity's International Council meeting. After dealing with the case of the talking ant, they moved on to another pressing issue. "Look at the main screen," someone announced. That red dot was the last recorded location of a crocodile entering the mountains. The satellite image from above showed the entire mountain range shrouded in mist. Before the spiritual energy wave, this mountain was lush and green with no sign of mist. This fog was not a natural phenomenon native to the area. The officials started buzzing. Why are we showing a ravine? Could it be the hiding place for the beasts? Stop with the interruptions, the presenter snapped. We're focusing on the ravine, not because it's scenic, but because we're investigating who's behind these strange beasts we've been discussing. The ongoing theory was that a human was controlling the beasts, but perhaps it wasn't a human at all. This remark gave the high-ranking commander a near heart attack, but it wasn't untrue. The moment the miniature reconnaissance plane on the crocodile was destroyed, a shadow of an unknown creature appeared on the right of the screen. What the hell? Zoom in. What is that black blob over there? When they did, they found it was Ziyu's face. A low-quality image, but a high-quality face in a massive tree. Clearly a dangerous creature. A bearded man stared in shock. He, unable to believe that this grotesque form was the result of evolution. It had only been half a year since the first spiritual wave, and yet, in that short time, something had managed to control 8 falcons and a giant crocodile, all likely above rank 1. It manipulated beasts, altered humans, and learned human language. All these mysteries would now be verified by General Li in person. But by the time General Li arrived, he had been knocked right out of the area. This encounter confirmed that they weren't just dealing with humans, but with an even greater threat. Intelligent beasts, the very thing humanity feared most. Humanity had always considered itself the highest life form on Earth, using its intelligence to dominate the planet. Now, another intelligent species had emerged, threatening their supremacy and making them desperately fight back, determined to eliminate this new competition. General Li stood amidst the thick smoke and dust, blood dripping from his mouth. He barely managed a shallow breath before a sharp tree root was poised right at his throat. Ziyu had the upper hand, seeing humans as nothing but loudmouths. Just a moment ago, they were screaming about reclaiming this place. Now, the strongest among them was kneeling before him. "Let me set things straight," said the tree. "My multi-species family has never intended to wage war on humanity, has no appetite for human flesh, and absolutely no interest in invading human settlements. If humans retreat, I can guarantee the beasts will live in seclusion, causing no trouble for anyone, and certainly won't threaten humanity." But General Li wasn't buying the willow's words. Rising to his feet, he broke the news to the tree, saying, "If you haven't figured it out by now, let me enlighten you." He revealed that all the soldiers who entered the mountain carried spiritual interference devices, capable of masking their energy within a 5-meter radius. With so many jammers around, even Ziyu's beasts would be cut off from spiritual flow, and the fog he created couldn't detect them. Through his radio, General Li had kept tabs on the entire battle. He then dropped the bomb to convince. All of Ziyu's pets had been wiped out. General Li, knowing that just saying it might not convince Ziyu, went straight to the point, announcing that Honey Badger and White Tiger were both dead, both lost within this very mountain. Raising his broken sword, he channeled spiritual energy into its hilt. In this battle, humanity was like ants, and Ziyu was the elephant. To secure their place on this land, they had to bring Ziyu down. The face cracked, forming a jagged mouth. Ziyu didn't need General Li's words to know sacrifices would be part of this fight. He had always known there would be painful losses, but that didn't mean they feared death. The resolve of the beasts was no less than that of humans. Yet, living creatures weren't machines that could fight without tiring. The falcons that repeatedly dived into the iron birds could no longer maintain their speed and were shot down in the sky. In the forest, the human trio couldn't withstand a vampire who could bask in sunlight, ending up grabbed by the neck like helpless prey. Even the chimp was overwhelmed by the superhumans, its body pierced with countless wounds. The beasts were losing ground, but for the sake of what they called fairness, they refused to retreat. This world belonged to everyone, a place where humans and beasts had coexisted. But since the beasts weren't allowed at the negotiation table, they had no choice but to fight for what was theirs, even if it led to tragic outcomes. Where was ancient Crocodile all this time? Now, only the bodies of his beloved 3 young ones remained, lifeless. It was too late for rescue. All that was left was mourning. If Flash didn't want to end up crying like Croc, it had better hurry. Ziyu, driven mad, yelled, "Since when did humans gain the right to set the order of the world, getting whatever they wanted? Since when?" Though he shouted at General Li, his words were meant for all of humanity, exposing their arrogance. General Li, though only half blinded, was at a loss for words, silent under the weight of his own guilt. It was time for humans to reflect on the logic they had been enforcing. Was it absurd? Things had come too far to laugh it off now. Ziyu raised his roots, preparing for a life-or-death showdown. He warned humanity. If they had started this war, they'd better root him out completely, because if he survived, he would stop at nothing to exact revenge. "Let me tell you once more," he declared. "My multi-species family will live wherever it pleases. We need no one's permission. This Earth doesn't belong to any single group, so human words alone don't hold weight here." The crocodile, having endured enough misery, roared fiercely. The human was surely done for, caught in the jaws of the beast. But from the other side, Flash had arrived, and the first thing he saw was a vampire strangling his comrade. Annoyed, he struck at the vampire, though his blow didn't land on Gula's neck, but only hit his cloak. That cloak, seemingly ordinary, could move on its own, and was remarkably tough. Flash was stunned by the absurdity of the cloak, while Qianqin was equally shocked to see Flash appear. When he saw the tiger skin in Qianqin's hand, his rage grew, and he wanted nothing more than to tear this human apart. The soldiers behind, seeing the small creature, were itching to shoot, but before they could act, a mantis followed in, slashing through the soldiers, chopping them up like fish. Gula jumped back, surprised to see not one but two beasts moving at such high speed, both of them intelligent. Yet Gula wasn't too shocked, though the sly witch Lengling was, and she fled on the spot. The little ant and the mantis were a real odd couple. One was all guts recklessly, while the other, cautious, spent its days trying to hold the other back, yet could never quite manage. Flash charged forward madly, only to be met with a solid blow to the face. Gula used his cloak to knock him back 20 meters, as if to say, "You're not the only one who can zoom around recklessly, little ant." The mantis, seeing its friend hit, rushed at Gula in retaliation, but Gula blocked every attack with his cloak. Then he split himself into countless bats, each one capable of inflicting harm. They specifically targeted the mantis, and with a direct hit, its blade was broken, blood spraying everywhere. Gula didn't even need a second move. The mantis could already tell that they didn't stand a chance. Just look at them. A mantis barely at level 7, an injured level 8 ant, facing off against a top-rank vampire. It felt like a game-over screen was the only thing left to see. Yet the little ant was filled with rage instead of despair. It screamed wildly. Running away wasn't an option. It couldn't just stand by again. Humans had once tormented its kind to extinction, leaving only it behind. Back then, it was too weak to do anything, and it lost everything. Now, with its second family under threat, how could it just stay put? Flash charged at Gula again, but the result didn't change. Still, it refused to stop. The little ant slashed dozens of times, and this time, Gula didn't even bother blocking, just dodging every single blow. Frustrated and powerless, Flash kept attacking, launching itself around Gula using the ground as a springboard, moving wildly. Gula remained unharmed, but the mantis watching from the sidelines was wide-eyed, barely able to keep up with Flash's speed, which was now too fast for to follow. Flash struck down with all his might, landing a direct blow to Gula's head, driving him into the ground as if nailing him there, causing the surrounding earth to shatter. It seemed like something else had broken too, as fragments flew past the little ant's face, its own mandible. Flash had delivered a full-force slash, even managed to hit Gula, but Gula's skin was so thick that not a single drop of blood spilled. Gula retaliated, stabbing the little ant in the stomach with his cloak. The mantis, seeing its friend in trouble, screamed and rushed forward, shouting, "You deathly pale guy, let my friend go!" Gula smirked, lifting his cloak, but before he could make a move, his body was locked from behind. It was a tight hug from Qingzhao, who was screaming out a name, Langfeng. With that call, the third figure, holding a 60-centimeter sword, descended from the sky. If Gula's skin couldn't be slashed, then they'd start from his eye, stabbing down through to the brain, then to the throat, the stomach, and wouldn't stop until they'd pierced all the way to his backside. Saw what was coming. Gula still remained calmed, then suddenly splitting into hundreds of thousands of bats to escape. Langfeng's sword stabbed straight into the ground, unleashing a dark aura in a 360-degree spread. If Gula had been hit by that, he might have really fainted, but he was lucky to escape in time. Langfeng clenched his teeth, watching the swarm of bats fly off. Can't fight head-on, so you turn into a bat? Coward. The whole flock of bats took off, fluttering their wings mockingly at Langfeng's group. But that trick was too easy to get for someone that had great sense like Thorn. "It's the bat with red eyes," she called out. The mantis heard, and quickly zeroed in on the red-eyed bat. It struck from behind. Surprised, vampire? This slash will break your back for good. From the start, Gula had looked down on this ragtag team of humans and beasts. Now, taking a hit like that must have stung, with blood pouring from his back and mouth as he crashed straight to the ground. Flash, worried Gula might snap his spine from the fall, darted over to catch him. Gula, seeing him approach, froze up completely. Flash grinned with relief, fearing his friend might break a rib, so he gently grabbed Gula's head and pushed it down for added safety. The little ant meant well, but lacked strength, only managing to kick up a bit of dirt and rock. Honestly, he should have used a shovel to pile more earth on his friend, keep him cozy. After the ant's gentle head press, Qingzhao wasn't sure if the team had actually won yet. The mantis approached, asking why the little ant was still standing there, stiff as a board. The ant was silent for a moment before suddenly screaming, "Run!" From beneath the soil, something dark red like blood surged up fiercely. As it broke the surface, it turned black and gathered into a large dark mass hovering in the air. The blood trails converged at high speed, like needles piercing through Flash and the mantis. This move, Gula's Nightmare Surge, had a wide area of effect, hitting not just the ant and mantis, but also sweeping over Qingzhao and Lengfeng's position. Qingzhao didn't have time to dodge, but managed to push his friend aside, sparing Lengfeng's life. As the debris settled and dust cleared, from the heart of Nightmare Surge, red energy radiated out. The bats regrouped, and the white face reappeared, looking a bit battered. It was a reminder not to underestimate the enemy. That last move had drained Gula quite a bit of energy, but the result wasn't in vain. Qingzhao was left with a hole, unconsciously or maybe dead already. The insect couple seemed mostly intact, well except for the mantis, which had lost half its body, sacrificed to shield the ant. Ordinary as he was, Flash was quite rude, but deep down, he was sentimental. Seeing his friend left with just one side, he couldn't stop crying. He sacrificed the right side of his body just to protect me. Gula burst out laughing. Expending a bit of energy, he had gotten quite the deal, leaving the whole other team in shambles. Yet, the little yellow ant hadn't logged out. The vampire, with all his experience, judged that even though this creature was tiny, it had incredible speed and decent strength. It had to be eliminated early on to avoid future trouble. With that thought, Gula transformed his cloak into a sharp drill, aimed it at the small ant, and charged forward. "Die right here." The little ant was shaken and didn't run, just sat there watching its friend writhe on the ground. But death wasn't ready to claim it yet, as Thorn stepped in to take the fatal blow in its place. Flash's eyes widened, staring at her back. Last time Flash had saved her, now she was saving him in return. Gula withdrew his drill, and Thorn's eyes lost their light as she slumped to the ground. The drill was retracted. The vampire was feeling genuinely moved. Humans and mutant beasts fighting side by side. If Gula were to report this to his superiors, it could lead to some important changes, like humans and mutant beasts teaming up in the future for mutual benefit. But who knew that behind Gula's face was a twisted, brutal personality? He decided to hide everything. Why? Because Gula enjoyed the thrill of slaughtering mutant beasts, the intoxicating pleasure of massacre. Only through this did he find happiness. So there was no need to mourn for any of them. He would personally send them all to the afterlife. Hostages didn't matter anymore. The big guy and the little plant person were just appetizers. Lengfeng sprang out of nowhere, swinging his sword at Gula, though of course it didn't cut through. All he needed was to buy some time for Team Quang to escape with the mantis. Lengfeng grabbed a side of Gula's cloak, and from the ground, a swarm of pink rats surged up. Rats? Well, that was a bit surprising. With Flash's temperament, there was no way he'd run. He even wanted to stand up and fight again, but the mantis stopped him, telling him to flee. They couldn't win. After all, it was a battle between two human. Better to let them tear each other apart. How could that blue mantis say such a thing? One was a vampire, and the other was the papa of a rat gang. What human are we even talking about here? The mantis urged the little ant to think back a bit, to the old days when it had stood before mountains of fallen ants strewn about in piles. Back then, it had already resolved to accept its fate. The feeling of living for today, but not knowing if there would be a tomorrow, what kind of suffering was that? The little ant had lived through it all. At that time, Flash had accepted a life of being nothing more than a worm, a piece of trash. His life wasn't worth even a scrap of toilet paper. But now he had broken free. He had a name, a home, and even new friends. People who wouldn't treat him like rubbish but instead made him feel cherished, made him want to protect them. That's why, today, even if his body was in tatters, breathing difficult, even if he couldn't win, he still had to fight. To the mantis, the little ant's determination was stubborn to the point of foolishness. The mantis pinned him down, shouting in his face, asking how many times he had to say it before he'd understand. They couldn't win, just run already. The little ant knew that too. Of course, he knew they couldn't win. He was frustrated, crying out loud, but everyone kept dying, one after another. He was so angry. He didn't want everyone to fall in vain. He didn't want to lose this place. His comrades had sacrificed themselves to protect their common home. If they could no longer protect it, then he would. He'd fight in their place. Running would be no different from dying. It was indeed foolish, but somehow endearing too. The mantis surrendered to him. If you want to win, even if it means dying, then eat me. This wasn't one of those, you'll have to step over my dead body threats. The mantis genuinely wanted to become part of Flash's strength. The little ant was stunned. Oh, buddy, what kind of joke was that? Who said he was joking? Wasn't cannibalism among mantises famous enough already? The situation now was a bit different, but either way, the mantis was nearing death. Back then, his mother had eaten his father's head before giving birth to him. His father had become his mother's strength, merging into her body and living on in her bloodline. That strange custom, that ridiculous way to die, the mantis didn't want to end up like his father. He didn't accept his fate of dying in his mate's mouth, and so he had left his kin to take control of his own life. Unlike Flash, the mantis had a greater resolve not to accept fate, nor did he rely on anyone emotionally. His obsession with freedom was immense, which was why, when Flash dragged him back to ZU, he kept trying to escape. No one could imprison him. No one could manipulate his soul. His decision to die today was his own choice. After Flash absorbed him, his strength would become the little ant's strength. His speed would become the little ant's speed. So tell me, will the ant agree to be the mantis's bride, only to bite his head off afterward? Flash cried even louder than before, refusing, unable to bear it. Wasn't the death of his teammates enough? Now he was expected to lose the mantis, too. Whether to do it or not, better hurry up. Over here, Gula had already swatted away a whole horde of rats. All in one day, Langfeng had lost his two closest friends and his children. He swung his sword as he cried, but how much longer could his strength hold? The mantis urged the little ant to be his bride. Just proposing and explaining was painful enough. Blood kept spilling from his mouth. A moment ago, he had dashed all the way here, only to find not a single breath of his comrades. Hadn't they all died already? Instead of dying at the hands of humans like them, he would rather let Flash take a few bites and die peacefully. He was willing to give all his strength to Flash. Even though he had been forced by the little ant to serve under ZU, he had always seen the little ant as a true friend. The little ant didn't need to blame itself. This was the ending he chose himself. Flash trembled, cursing over and over. How hateful. But hate it or not, he had to do it. So he opened his mouth wide. He could be silent or he could cry. Whatever he did, he had to fulfill the final wish of his dearest friend. Back to the fight between Gula and Langfeng. Langfeng had taken a drill from the vampire to protect his child. That blow likely meant his logout, not to mention the gaping wound in his stomach. The injuries he had sustained up to this point had already left him exhausted. Blood poured from his mouth, his pale eyes still full of tears. The little rat, seeing his papa fall, burst into tears too. Since when had that burden ZU brought along become something that Langfeng would willingly give his life to save? That whiteface found it hilarious watching Langfeng save that rat. What good was it to sacrifice his life for a rat? Soon enough, you'd all die together anyway. After finishing off Langfeng, Gula planned to go straight for the little rat. Right now, his drill was aimed precisely where it needed to be. One hit, and the rat would be dead before it even knew what happened. Just for a rat, was there a need to hit that hard? Explosions everywhere. Gula's face remained expressionless, calmly waiting for the dust to settle. Surprise, vampire! You didn't hit the little rat because the red superhero had blocked it. Just a small surprise, really. Just a change in appearance, in spirit energy, in strength. Blocking one strike wasn't enough to rattle this vampire. Sure, the ant might have leveled up, but it had only just hit level 9. Compared to the top of rank 1, there was no way it could stand shoulder to shoulder with the vampire. First things first, though. Time for some taunting. Oh, ant! Oh, dear ant! Why are you so dumb? Your friends sacrificed their lives to buy you time to escape. Yet here you are, refusing to run. Even if you're painted a different color, you're still no match for me. Leave a bit of stupidity for others, why don't you? While Gula was enjoying his taunts, the red superhero suddenly appeared right behind him. Gula sensed danger and immediately turned around. How could it be so fast? He twisted his cloak to strike where the red superhero had just been. Another strong hit, but once again, it missed. Looking around, he tried to find where it went. Damn it! That stupid ant had the nerve to ignore its opponent and went to pick up the dead rats instead. Flash gently placed the rats beside Langfeng. The little ant knew that, even though Langfeng had decided to leave back then, his heart always stayed loyal to the divine god tree. Langfeng treated the rats that Ziyu had given him as if they were his own blood, nurturing and cherishing them above all else. Now that they were dead, the little ant couldn't let them be separated from their father. Standing in front of the three bodies of those who bore human blood, all of whom had fought wholeheartedly for Ziyu, Flash made a vow to avenge them. Now, he didn't hate humans, he hated the wicked. Gula raised his level of surprise a notch. Quick work, huh? In the blink of an eye, the little ant had gathered all the bodies together. But what's this talk of revenge, as if it's guaranteed? Gula muttered that he'd underestimated his opponent earlier, letting the little ant do this and that. But now, there would be no such luck. No more rampaging, no more wishes. That ant would regret ever being born into this world. Just as he was flapping his mouth, he got punched square in the jaw. Even Flash's fist was still smoking, a clear sign that the punch had really hurt. The punch had knocked off the cream layer on Gula's left cheek, his mouth spilling blood, and his rear end firmly lodged in the rubble. Flash taunted Gula to get up. One hit is nothing. Get up and take a few more. That's when I'll be satisfied. You've killed so many of my comrades, and you think you're going to die in just one hit? Not a chance. Now, Gula was seriously shocked. To be this strong at just level 9, impressive, but he wasn't one to be easily trampled. I'll pass on this service, thanks. Gula absorbed his cloak, switching to a fresh new skin and even changing his hairstyle. If the little ant could change colors, then so could Gula. They had to match up for a fair fight. Yet to Gula, Flash was still not worthy of standing on equal ground. Flash didn't care what skin he was wearing. He used lightning speed to get close to Gula, but ended up taking a lightning-fast hit from him as well. Gula's speed in executing his moves had changed dramatically. Before the little ant could throw a punch, he had already wrapped his cloak around his hand and stabbed straight into the ant's stomach. Gula grinned widely, his mouth big enough to swallow a whole watermelon. But forget about that mouth. His hands were even more dangerous. Not only were they cloaked, but they were also covered with countless sharp spikes. So you've become the red superhero, but you're still so weak, Ant? He taunted, slamming his spiky hand down on Flash's head, then sprouting a dozen tentacles to pummel him relentlessly. A strong ant was still an ant after all. He had been always looking down on them. So what if level 9 comes with high speed? In the end, you'll still die by the hands of this vampire. What's important isn't speed, but strength. Talking nonsense, aren't you? Flash muttered as he emerged from the smoke and delivered a punch to Gula, effectively silencing that overly chatty mouth. The punch spun Gula's head a full 180 degrees. In terms of killing intent, Gula had nothing on the ant. But when it came to variety in moves, Gula definitely had the upper hand. For instance, right now, countless bats, black and red, were emerging from Gula's back. He directed one to dive straight at Flash. Gula's battle experience and skills were undoubtedly top tier. If close combat was too risky, he'd switch to long range instead. But throwing just one bat made dodging too easy. The bat skimmed past the little ant's shoulder and exploded behind him. Bat-shaped bullets are my signature move, Gula taunted. Each bat is a flying bomb. You dodged one, didn't you? There are plenty more, and while you can keep dodging, your fallen comrades can't. So just stand still and let me throw them at you. That line really pissed Flash off that he scoffed. If I can't dodge, I'll just smash all the bats. Problem solved. Come at me, all of you. Did I hear that right? You're saying you'll take down all my bats? Do you even know how many there are? Or are you just bluffing? Gula mocked. Let me count for you. The whole sky is full of bats, probably around 200 or 300, huh? And now I'm leveling this place. All these painted ants, those corpses, even the cameraman, killing them all. Goodbye. Flash stayed silent, unfazed by Gula's shouting. He wasn't scared. Meanwhile, Gula seemed a bit shaken, losing much of his composure, yelling non-stop. Gula extended his hand forward, commanding the bats to attack, and the swarm of bats hurtled toward Flash's position. The little ant got into position, glared upward, channeled all its power into its hands, and then put on a masterful display of fruit slicing. Well, not slicing exactly, more like smacking them away like a pro baseball player. Each swing hit its mark perfectly, sending the bats flying back towards Gula, where they exploded, knocking him down. This blow wasn't just painful, it was downright embarrassing, and the vampire ended up coughing and sputtering. Just like before, when his bats had been slammed down to the ground, the little ant was ready for him. This time, though, it learned from last time. Rather than pinning his head to the ground, it just punched him so hard he flew horizontally instead of landing straight down. The result wasn't much better than crashing. Gula was sent flying back 1,000 meters, eventually landing flat on the ground. The little ant might have been a bit too rough here, as its helping hand left Gula coughing and gasping like crazy. Maybe the head pinning approach would have been the better choice after all. After the vampire buddy finally landed, the little ant went right in for a massage, giving him a helping hand. To make sure he couldn't wriggle away, it held his head down with one foot and started taking care of him, straight to the face. The punch earlier from Flash had seemed like a small pop at first, but a few seconds later, it exploded spectacularly. Gula didn't die, though. He crawled out of the smoke, coughing non-stop like he'd inhaled something bad. Clenching his teeth and furrowing his brows, Gula thought, could this really be the true strength of the ant? It was fast, unbelievably so, impossible to catch up with, and its strength was terrifying. Getting tossed around like this by a level 9 ant made no sense. Frustrated, Gula yelled, "Why? You are only at the entry level 9, and I am at rank 1 already. Why can't I defeat you?" He'd been living a high and mighty life for so long that getting beaten down didn't sit well with him at all. In a rage, Gula powered up, transforming into a giant. "You damn ant! Don't you dare get on top of me!" he bellowed, slamming his fist down to the ground. But Flash lightly dodged, ending up behind him, one foot still on his head. Gula spotted the ant behind him and spun around, wildly throwing punches while cursing in anger. He punched like mad, but not a single one landed. In return, Flash nailed him right in the stomach with one solid hit. With all his combat experience, Gula grabbed hold of Flash's arm the moment it struck, firmly catching the ant. The little ant was taken aback, realizing it couldn't dodge while held like this. Gula, gleeful and grinning wide, taunted, "You're done for." He raised his claw, reminding that brat that he was a rank 1 powerhouse, and then struck the ant square in the face, grinning from ear to ear. The impact knocked Flash back, triggering memories of the past. It recalled Ziyu talking to it once, understanding its deep resentment toward humans, but reminding it that not all were hateful. People like Qianqin, Qingjiao, and Lengfeng had all sacrificed themselves to protect this place. They weren't detestable at all. Over time, Flash would slowly come to accept them, changing its view on humans, eventually considering them true allies. "Today, I finally get it, Master," it thought. "This vampire took my comrades' lives. I have to take him down." After Gula's punch, Flash didn't just survive, it looked even fiercer, making Gula break into a cold sweat. With blazing eyes, Flash glared at Gula, and then rapped out a diss in human language. "You slaughtered my companions, offended our master, and tried to take away our home. Now even my only friend has been brutally killed." Gula, taken aback, stared wide-eyed. Flash didn't stop until it slammed a fist into Gula's face, declaring, "This is unforgivable." This one, Gula had killed 3 humans, a mantis, and even a whole group of little rats. He had to die immediately. After landing the punch square in Gula's face, Flash followed it up by planting his head straight into the ground. It was a thunderous blow, leaving Gula's head buried in the dirt, finally marking an end to the little ant's fight.